Hello, everyone, and welcome to our conversations, the Pro-Rusky conversations in a response to the COVID-19 virus. And I'm actually really excited today to introduce you to our guest, Anastasia Patsey. I'm going to turn up my phone here, who is with us from St. Petersburg, Russia. And I will hand it over to Anastasia. She is the director of the Museum of Non-conformist Art. She is also a curator there, independent curator, and she also runs the St. Petersburg Artist Residency. And she can continue with all of her responsibilities and projects. So welcome, Anastasia, and please tell us a little bit about, well, I said where you are, but what's going on in St. Petersburg right now, and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea, for the invitation, and hi, everyone. It's a really good time for this interview series, and it's a very important topic. So I'm really glad that I was invited to talk about that. So briefly about the institutions that I represent, I direct the Museum of Non-conformist Art, which focuses on collecting, researching, and promoting unofficial art from the Soviet Union. Well, basically everything that was banned from official arts throughout the second half of the 20th century for ideological and political reasons. So everything that was not socialist realism. And the museum is part of a larger art complex that is called Pushkinskaya 10, and it is an art center that's been a very important point on the cultural map in our city for over 30 years now. And it started as a squad that was created by underground artists who were not officially acknowledged as artists in the Soviet times, and then it transformed and is now one of the first Russia's artist-run institutions and a multidisciplinary art space. It is also the place where the St. Petersburg Art Residency is based, that you, Andrea, were all participant of, and this is how I try to combine working for the museum, for residency, but in the end it's all under one roof and in one place. So yeah, how things are going on in St. Petersburg? Well, if you look outside, it seems like everything is normal, but actually it's not. And Russia is still on the way up to the peak and to the plateau of the corona cases. The people are actually taking all the regulations responsibly and socially distancing and avoiding any contact, staying at home, but it's a large country. So the numbers are also huge, and it's not that bad as in the US at the moment. And the government is pretty strict. There are also fees for breaking these new quarantine rules. And yeah, people are trying to do their best, but still this is something that we have to go through.
Right. Are people taking precautions? And I'm wondering, for artists wearing the masks, designing masks, or is that
it is also a thing now. A lot of artists who I know designed their own masks or produced masks and distributed them among their friends and families. Yes, there is, I'm not sure if there is now an obligatory rule to wear masks. I think there is since last week, but yes, a lot of artists are of course working with this theme, not only in terms of producing masks and protection, but also reflecting on the crisis in their creative practice.
I'd have to say, online I've seen some full body costumes from Russian artists. I like the way the Russians have taken, in my sort of Facebook social media experience, they've taken it one step further in terms of full body costumes. So
yeah, it is. I hope we won't need such kind of protection, but it's good to have one.
Yeah. And on that note, could you tell us about some of the projects that you're working on? and maybe some of the artists at Pushkinskaya did that in response to the virus right now, pandemic.
Well, at the Art Center, we had a really hard situation when the quarantine was announced, because on one hand, we have a lot of artists working and living in the building, so it is a unique it is a unique part of our complex that we have art studios. So we have living and working spaces, museum spaces, museum storages, galleries, bars, and it's all together under one roof. And we had to close the space for visitors, also because our artists are in the risk group, so most of them are aged over 60, and we didn't want to put them under risk. And at the same time, also the absence of visitors had a very significant influence on our budget, because the budget relies a lot on tickets and tours and sales. So this kind of put us in a financial crisis as well. And I think it was a hard time when we understood that we have to close down. And we didn't know when, but we knew it would happen. And so at some point, everyone was a little bit depressed, thinking about what's going to happen. But we managed to transmit all of our programs, or most of our programs, online, and try to see those limitations as opportunities to do something else, or do things we did in different ways. And I think that is basically the only way you can survive professionally, probably, when a lot of things are being canceled. So it hit really hard in our residency program because we had to cancel the residencies for March, and then for April, and now for May, and also probably for June. And the residency is, of course, a place where you travel to, right, in the classic understanding of art residencies. So we understood that we won't have any artists in the nearest future, and we thought of a way to support our artists and members of our residency community, and to kind of show that the cultural production is still going on despite the lockdown. So we created the virtual studio of the St. Petersburg Art Residency, virtual SPAR, and this is a platform where artists can apply for an online residency. And we first started it just to reach out to artists from our community, those who participated in residency in the past or were going to participate in the program this and next year. And we just thought that's a good tool to kind of bring all of them together. But then we've opened up the applications to a larger audience and received a lot of interest and inquiries. And now we have about 50 artists who have their accounts in the virtual studio. And because I just looked into the statistics this morning, and I was pretty excited, because I saw that we have almost 100 posts, over 250 comments, and almost 5,000 views. I didn't really see that coming, and it's getting hard to operate, but we're managing that. So the idea is that it functions as a virtual studio where you can come in and talk about your work, put up some images. It's not a newspaper, it's not a blog, it's not an online gallery, so it's all work in progress. It's all about commenting and getting comments, about giving and getting support. So we try to make it very, very informal. And a lot of people actually shared a lot about their life during the Corona crisis and went far beyond their creative work.
That's interesting. It's to give the residency, I would say, almost an expansive life, or an expansive global existence. And I'm just wondering, through this, it might even be promoting the Art Center in some unforeseen ways that are positive.
It is. It turned out that it really is, because we also have a crowdfunding program running for Pushkinskaya 10, and we were happy to see that artists are interested in supporting the center, and there is this global outreach, and now we're kind of thinking what to do. So we feel like we don't have the capacity to operate it because it's grown out of its scale 2-3 times. We were counting with maybe 2 or 3 posts every week, and now we have about 5 or 7 every day. But we don't want to put it on hold, so we're probably taking another step and taking it to a new level.
Do you think that it will continue even post the pandemic, that this kind of online studio, or would you go back to the real sort of, we'll say, in-person studio, the physical studio?
Well, I think that we will go back to our offline residency, because this is what we're used to. This is what we love. And I mean, there is no online tool that can replace personal contact, a real studio, the smell of paint, or the sound of the camera, these all things. But I think that we will be continuing to work on this virtual studio, because it makes this residency experience, which is of course a different experience if you compare it to an offline residency, but it makes this experience accessible to a much broader audience. And many artists who can't travel, who can't come to St. Petersburg, they can get some of this experience. They can meet other artists, do some networking, share their art, and get comments from curators. So we thought that this would be relevant even after the crisis.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm interested in, as an artist, and also as a professor of arts. But what is being created here? What are the new ways of communication, the new ways of critique, the new ways of sharing the experience that will continue or add to our existing language of sharing a conversation and meeting and creating. So I'm looking for that wherever I go. So I can see that being successful there. Yeah. And with that, I'm just curious, are you finding particular projects that artists are doing, or that you're working on also as a curator, that are in a direct response, I mean, the programming, but also in terms of thematic exhibitions, particular studios that you've seen online, and how are artists and yourself as a curator responding with thematic projects?
Well, I think there is no way you cannot respond.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an event that turned around everything, that turned everything over, the way we live, work, communicate, think. So even when the lockdown is over, even when we go back to normal, this will be an absolutely different kind of normal. And there will be new rules, and there will be changes that you can't just ignore. So I think that during the next couple of years, we will see a lot of art projects reflecting on the crisis and on the new rules and on this experience that we had as a global nation. In person, I'm mostly focused on our institutional programs and how we can now take those institutional programs online. So we have the virtual residency, and now we're also transforming our museum programs into online programs. And just last week we received a grant from the Vladimir Potanin Foundation, who announced yes, thank you. They announced a special support program for Russian NGOs who are struggling to survive this crisis, being left without a large part of their income. And this grant that we received will allow us to create a large-scale virtual platform dedicated to unofficial art in the Soviet Union and non-conformism after the Soviet times. So this is something that we're going to work on during the next 12 months. So it's going to be pretty big, and it will merge together all the digital projects that we already have, our digital collection, our archive, digital, let's say, virtual studios of artists. And so there's going to be a lot of things under one roof.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, so there'll be, I assume, links you can share, and yeah.
It's going to be something like a virtual representation of the Pushkinskaya 10 and the museum. Yes, it sounds, I'm also a little bit frightened of the scale and yes, the innovative character of this idea, but I think we can handle it. So it's going to be like Pushkinskaya tab put up online. Its space, its cultural heritage, its people. It will also have a memorial component because well, we have a very important issue with artists after passing. We don't really know what to do with their studios, how to commemorate them, but also how to keep this space a living space and a dynamic space, because we can't just museumify the whole art center at some point. So this is also something that can be solved with digital tools. And we're looking forward to that.
That's a very interesting topic that you bring up, actually, because I you know, as a visitor to St. Petersburg, I think one of the, you know, sort of incredible and singular, I would say, you know, the nature of the city is that it is a city of museums, and it's a historical city. It's a city alive and full of artists, and I think it's a wonderful place to work as an artist. In terms of the city as a muse, it's relatively still affordable compared to other cities around the world. And there's a vibrant contemporary arts community that you're a leader in. But with that, I know that some of the studios, if you could talk a little bit about some of the artist studios that have been made into these museums, but there's also something I think incredibly valuable about that. So I think striking that balance within the Pushkinskaya Disset complex is really, really important. So that's exciting to hear. But maybe if you could just talk about a few of the current studios and artists. I know there's been a few passings. If maybe we could just bring their names up quickly.
Yes. So it's yes, it's a very sad topic for all of us. But at the same time, this is life, and what we can do is commemorate those artists in a proper way and make their heritage accessible to the new generations of visitors, researchers, other artists. So that would be our main task. Last year, we said goodbye to two very important members of the community. It was Evgeny Pekotsky, who had his studio on the 4th floor in building B, and Sergei Kowalski, who was one of the founders of the art center, and I think one of the headliners of the underground art scene in Leningrad since it appeared. So with losing him in 2019, it was also a huge trauma for us as an institution and for us as a team. And the question what to do with his space that is full of art, it's a Gesamtkunstwerk, so it's total work of art. And when I finally got in there, because I also had to take a while I couldn't go there right away. I had to first, just calm down and reflect on everything before actually going in and doing something. And I was just walking and understanding that the proper way would be just to put up some good light, make sure that the objects are conserved and it's clean, the temperature, the air moisture is right, and just open it up as a total installation, because this is what every artist's space is. It is a kind of a personal, total art installation.
Absolutely.
And a universe sometimes in a very small space. But we understand that we can't do that because because the documents need to be reorganized if we want to access them, and so we don't want just to have it as a visual experience. It should be also working on many levels. So what we did is now try to separate the archive, the art, the library, the personal belongings, and have a curator for all those blocks. And we have been documenting everything, creating gigabytes of data and of images, texts, scans, photographs, all those media. And now we're at a point where we need to organize that. And what we're planning to do, for example, in Sergei's studio, is to have a historical exposition there, and to have there, what is it going to look like? Maybe a multimedia installation, or some kind of media object that would commemorate all of the artists who lived and worked at the Pushkinskaya 10 in one place. Media monument, you can name it whatever you like, but we're still working on the concept, but something that leaves this physical commemoration and this more traditional culture of commemorating behind, and puts it to a new digital level.
Right. That sounds incredibly exciting. And I miss him too. And I have to, I don't, hopefully he was looking at the exhibition from wherever he is now. But we did host a exhibition at the Wells Library at Indiana University this past fall that had to do with a symposium with the siege. And within a slideshow in the library, I did include a painting that Sergei sent me, which was entitled "The Shostakovich's" or "The Seventh Symphony." Mm-hmm. So, and it was, we had talked about bringing some of his work to the States before he passed, but I was really, it was beautiful to include that painting as the opening and closing image for the slideshow in the library. So. Yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting to know that that's going to happen.
I just think that this crisis also made us look, made us find a new perspective to look on digital instruments, on virtual reality, on offline and online. Maybe we understood that there are a lot of things offline that can be easily transferred to online. Mm-hmm. And that can make our life maybe easier, but also that there are some things that are only manageable in a digital space, right? Such as commemorating artists. There is, like, if you would like to do it in a good way, we would have to open up a whole museum dedicated to Sergei Kowalski, for example. And that is, we just all understand we're dreamers and idealists, but we all understand that this is probably impossible on a practical level, but we can do it digitally. So I think it was a push for us, and also, I mean, for all of the museums, some of which were still very critical and not very active in the online field, at least in Russia, that was the case. A push to them for them to take a look at what's possible.
I think. Yeah, I mean, you're currently working with monuments of a generation of artists that are passing right now, but then there's the possibility of monuments to victims of the pandemic too. And I don't know if you're seeing any of that within your community. Hopefully everybody's well. But I think that the concept of the monument is going to be an interesting sort of transformation right now in terms of how we view monuments and memorials.
I absolutely agree. This is going to be different. I also think that well, the theme of monuments, it's a very complex field.
And in Petersburg too.
Also, especially in St. Petersburg, especially in Russia, but in general in any country, I think that if we think of monuments as something that makes us remember things, persons, events, if we think about monuments of something like marks in our daily life that take us back somewhere else, then even the change of our daily routine and our rituals, our lifestyle would be a global commemoration of what happened. So if we, for example, leave some of our habits behind in commemoration of this crisis, that would be a huge thing. If we maybe, I don't know, it can be even small things like paying more attention to washing your hands, or getting your groceries online because sometimes it's more eco-friendly, or having your meetings online instead of asking someone to travel for 2 hours to get to your office, which is more respectful towards the time of a person you're meeting. So all those small things that will change will make us remember what happened, and will be a non-physical commemoration of the crisis. So I think this is what we're heading to. And of course the art world will change. I mean, I think the amount of online offers that we're now receiving is absolutely overwhelming. It is just too much, and it's much more than you've expected. Everyone's online, all of the exhibitions are online, all the streams, everything. So that's a lot. We need to go through this phase and to see what we actually need. I think that museums and galleries and art spaces will still remain as physical spots, but maybe museum visits will be different. Maybe visiting a museum and standing in front of an actual artwork, physical artwork, will become a very exclusive luxury experience. Maybe visitors will be allowed to go into exhibitions only in small groups or alone as individuals, and this will completely change the experience, I believe. So I just hope it is not going away, because I mean, one of the things I miss a lot right now is hanging pictures on walls and installing exhibitions and having this physical contact with artworks. This is precious, and you don't always notice that when you do it on a daily basis.
I can only, yeah, no, I completely understand. Absolutely. And there's the physical realization of once a exhibition is hung, is installed, and that you as the curator, that's your creative act, that's you're putting the work into the context, but how the work is speaking together on the walls, and you stand back and it's this epiphany of what your work looks like as a curator. So, and it's physical, it's so physical. So it's going to be interesting how that transfers into the digital world. And then
yes, I hope I just hope it will remain balanced.
Yes, I think we're globally, hopefully globally, we're all working on that.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thought, though. Actually, it's interesting to hear you miss that, and I completely applaud that as an artist too. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Or any like closing words? Future projects that you might be working on, online, offline? Maybe within a year. Who knows at this point?
I would just like to thank you for the invitation, for this interesting talk. I would like to wish everyone to stay healthy and safe and find this inner power, motivation, and daily inspiration just to go through this time, however challenging it is, and to maybe become a new person in some ways, and to rethink a lot of things in our life. Let's use this time for something great.
Thank you. Thank you, Anastasia. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thanks.
And
Thanks a
much,
lot.
much love to everyone at Pushkinskaya Disset and,
Yes.
and St. Petersburg. Missing you all.